Hey guys, I am John Carrick, the author of Legacy of a Mad Scientist and The Legend of Ashley Fox, two amazing science fiction fantasy novels for you on Amazon, Smashwords, and right here on YouTube. Today we are looking at Image Comics Trencher #1 from 1993 by Keith Giffen and Lovern Kindzierski. And Lovern did the coloring, but Keith Giffen did the writing and pencils and inks. And this is a unique book, as I'm sure you can tell. I'm sure a lot of you have it in your collection. This is one of those comics where Todd McFarlane said, I could have my dog write it, but if Michelangelo drew it, it'll sell. I think in 1993, this is still the age of flat colors, although you're seeing the gradients in the explosions right here. There's gradients on this cover, there's gradients on his face here on the back. They were used a little sparingly. This is not zip tones, or if it is, it's really well done. My guess is that this is computer colored gradients in 93. I don't know which program they were using. I'm sure someone could tell us. And what is happening here? Trencher is a Blade Runner for superheroes, essentially, or superpowered beings. He is a time and space traveling bounty hunter. And right now, he is teleporting into Miami yesterday in 1993. And it's 3 pages of explosions, and then he appears. And he is hunting. I think right here we see his hands, you know, and that's it. He is hunting a guy named Nosejack. At least that's what he calls him down here. This guy in blue at the bottom. This is Trencher, or he is a Trencher. He is a Trencher. I don't think that's his name. He's basically a rebellious sort of Bruce Willis style futuristic bounty hunter cop. And he is hunting this guy Nosejack, who is, I have a character that I'm actually writing, not my character at all. There is a famous mythological character from India named Angulimala, who had a necklace, a mala of Anguli fingers. He was a outlaw, bandit living in the hills, terrorizing people between villages. And there's a lot of stories about him. But the Buddha subdues him and turns him into a good person. Much different than the way Trencher here is subduing Nosejack. They have a bit of a fight. And Nosejack uses, so I should explain, he uses his nose hairs like autonomous appendages, like tentacles. And it's really gross. And here he's throwing Trencher around, but Trencher lights the nose hairs like wicks on a fuse on a bomb, wicks for fireworks, and they burn back into his head and burn up, and it's really gross. And then Trencher rips his lower jaw off on this page here. He rips his chin and lower jaw off his face, and yeah. Then he puts his fist through his torso and goes through his pockets for loose change. And his computer, when he does that, when he starts looting the remains of the corpse, his computer monitor, he has this sort of R2-D2 C3PO character that's attached to his cybernetic. He's like a T-800 time-traveling cyborg sort of thing. And this computer that's attached to him starts reading him the riot act for looting the dead body. Then we get a few pages. This is kind of interesting. This is good writing, actually. So Trencher, the character, goes and rents a room at a sort of a porn hotel, and wants to shower and clean up. And his computer is telling him that's unnecessary. You don't need to shower and clean up. This is bullshit. What are you doing? You're just wasting time. You have missions to complete. And he's arguing with the computer, of course. But then he goes out and proceeds to carjack a van by jumping onto it in the middle of traffic, putting his face through the passenger window and telling the guy to get out. The bottom panel, the guy does get out. And Trencher, this is a nice bit of humor. Down here at the bottom, he says, "Oh my God, the seat's wet. Gross." That's clever. This is well written. Obviously it's the coloring is where it gets lost. If this was, it's hard to say that this is colored correctly because this is an acquired taste. The cover is an acquired taste. And I think the colorist executed far more artistic. Now, you could say it was his artistic limitations or it was style choice. Whatever it was, the colorist dominates this book. He took this art, and I don't think this art got a fair treatment by the colorist. You could say it didn't get a fair treatment by the inker, who was the original artist. The colorist might be his best friend, but still, they only got 6 issues, 5 plus 1, I think, or 4 plus 1. So the color, it's very intense. It's very kinetic. This should be a cartoon. I would pay $1 million to make this into a cartoon, and it would be worth every penny because every panel is action. It is kinetic. You can feel the movement in the images, and that's the goal of comics, is to put motion on the page. And he absolutely succeeded. Keith Giffen absolutely succeeded. Every panel is a masterpiece. The colors make it something else completely. And a different colorist would make it something else again. So here we get, now this is kind of cool. There's a scene where he's at this building. This is his next assignment. And he's looking at all the names, and they're like McFarlane, Silvestri, Lee, Liefeld. They're all the image creators, except for one, C. Noble, and that's the one that he's after. So he rings the buzzer and goes on up. And it's an old lady, and here's another great bit of comedy. He says, Jesus, you couldn't have waited a couple hours? And you're in such a rush? And so, because she's old, she's going to die. And so he's looking around the apartment. She's like, oh, you're a trencher. You're one of those. You came to get me. Okay. All right. I knew this was coming. And he is taken aback. How did she know this was coming? This is a big problem. If they all know I'm coming, it's going to be very hard to do this job. And then he sees this signed photo from Herr Swastika, who reminds me of Chairface Chippendale. And it says to share, blah, 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 blah. And Trencher realizes her name is Chernobyl. And while she's in the other room getting ready, he realizes what's about to happen. Now this is page 19 and 20 already. Think about that, 20 pages so fast. Because this is page 22. It's the only one that doesn't have a page number at the bottom. This is just brilliant, really. Kaboom. And so it doesn't kill Trencher. It just rips him in half. His computer still works. He's still talking to the home base. And then we get Anti-Aeon Flux, which is kind of gross. And this is 93, so it's obviously a dig at MTV's Aeon Flux. And she is, continuing to threaten him with her overly rendered body. And then this guy's name is not Nosejack, it's Nasal Python. And it talks about how his nose hairs are what works. And we get a great ad for Wildstorm. And another ad. So now this is right after Rob Liefeld killed Story with Youngblood. They threw Story out the window. And yeah, so I only have time to re-record this. I talk a bunch of other nonsense and it's getting late and I gotta run out in a minute. But I do want to mention Michael Sarion on Slaves.com. And so now we're gonna cut back. This is, it's hard to take the art style. How could you take the art style more seriously? But at the same time, this is why I hate superhero comics. I can't review superhero comics. I can't take superhero comics seriously. And I suppose that's why Rob killed Story with Youngblood #1 and no one's been able to bring it back since in comic books. And now everyone is paying the price. Yesterday I talked about legitimacy in the culture war and legitimacy of writers and writers working in the mainstream. And I said there's no legitimate writers working in comics or in general. There are a couple, and so I'm going to correct myself. First, I want to recommend a story to you guys. Sometimes a Great Notion by Ken Kesey, who wrote he was the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test and the Merry Pranksters, but he wrote Sometimes a Great Notion and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is much more famous. Sometimes a Great Notion is the better book and the better film. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is Jack Nicholson, but Sometimes a Great Notion is Paul Newman. And it's about a family of loggers in the Pacific Northwest. And it's a better book and a better film. It's not as spectacular as Jack Nicholson, but he's a great writer. You guys should know about him. If you're into fiction, if you're into producing fiction, remember, everything you produce is a reply to everything that's gone before. The world presumes that you know or that you have been influenced by the works of the greats. So here's the ones that I wanted to mention for today. Excuse me for just a second. But there are a couple writers working today, especially one who's doing really, really well in the mainstream, Taylor Sheridan, who wrote Wind River, the Sicario movies, Yellowstone, Tulsa King, and Landman, as well as starred in Sons of Anarchy, and he's fucking jacked, so he hit the gym. I have mad respect for Taylor Sheridan. I don't always respect, I stopped watching Yellowstone when Beth and her brother had like their 20th fight over her hysterectomy. So that show kind of got, I soured on it, but 1923 and 1883 were both great. He introduced Michelle Randolph and that other girl from 1883 who was, those girls are angels and should be in my comic books. Yeah, so I respect him. Most other writers seem like cucks who have bent the knee to Jew power. And I'm sure he has in his own way. His time is limited. Plus, I'm seeing the same scenes over and over again. Tulsa King is about as repetitive as the Flash TV show. And you see the same thing in comics. Like Conan, it's the same comic over and over and over again. You just change the bad guys, right? Conan's values don't change. He gets conned, he fails trust, he fails, what do you call it? I'm spacing on it. Character assessment. Not a good judge of character. Conan is not a good judge of character. But that's because he knows himself, and he knows he is a rogue. So how do you accuse other people of being rogues? The question isn't whether or not someone's a rogue, it's whether or not they decide to betray you. Everyone is a scoundrel. And if you accept that, they won't let you down. The question is whether or not they decide to betray you or when they decide to betray you and whether or not you saw it coming, which is a really good segue into today's card, Conflicted, 8 of Spades. Today's card is you have constructed a bug out location for the end of the world and the end of the world has happened. You were correct. You did everything right. You've got your family. You're on your way to your bug out location and you get there. And the local contractor who built it for you has gotten inside first and has locked your family out, and you don't have access to the location. And it's up to him whether or not he decides to let you in, and he tells you that some of his employees are probably on their way too. So what do you do in that situation? How do you recover from that? Well, first off, you didn't have a bug out location. You had a mountain cabin. That's not a bug out location. If a local contractor who's not an immediate member of your family knows about it, it's not a bug out location. That's a mountain cabin that you can use for vacations. The only people who should know about it are your immediate family. People flip homes all the time with their immediate family. Most of my family's in construction. Most of has been or was at one time. I was in construction. That's all work you can do. There's no need for a local contractor. If it's in Southern California, he's probably not even of your race. He's probably of another race, specifically Latino, Mexican, whatever. He's not going to let you in. La Raza does not care about you, white man. And I didn't want to talk about this, but I'm going to, because the other guy I wanted to mention is Anthony Jeselnik. I just saw his 2024 stand-up, his 20 years doing stand-up. The guy's got it, man. I respect the shit out of him for what he's willing to say. He does go too far for me. Not does he go too far. He has a different perspective on life. There's a couple things I want to mention too. I saw an episode of Tulsa King, the first season. I think it's the ending episode. Stallone is great at doing speeches, motivational speeches. His motivational speech from Rocky V, where he talks to his son about holding you in my hand. That's a great speech, and I respect the shit out of Stallone. He's seen a lot of tragedy in his life. A lot of tragedy. So, and he wrote Rocky. Schwarzenegger is not on the same level as Sylvester Stallone. He's just not. I'm sorry. His father may have been. His father is way above Stallone, but that's just by luck, right? He happened to be in the right place at the right time. Anthony Jeselnik told a joke. It's just hilarious. He said his friend had gotten the Japanese symbol for luck, and he said that's not the Japanese symbol for luck, or no, the Japanese symbol for awesome, and it was a swastika. And he says, "Hey, buddy, that's not the Japanese symbol for awesome. It's the German symbol for awesome." And all his jokes are awesome. What I will say, where he goes a little bit too far, he and I have something in common, different from Stallone and different from Taylor Sheridan. I grew up in a big family. I'm the oldest of 14 children. My youngest sister was born when I was 17. And I came out to Los Angeles after serving in the Marine Corps to see what I could do in comics and TV and writing. And I do not have a 4-year degree from a big university. I went to animation school after the Marine Corps. And the animation school turned out to never become accredited and then went out of business. So my degree, I can't transfer it to any other schools. If I were to start over, I'd have to start over. And so it's hard to pitch my scripts and stories in, well, hard, beyond hard. I never got to a point that I had an agent or was pitching stories or writing scripts for Hollywood, which I am more than okay with. I'm seeing the things that they're producing. It was mostly reality shows for a long time. I am not upset. I'm not butthurt. I met Ryan Johnson. I read Brick before it got produced. I worked with Sam Ismail, who did Mr. Robot. I know these people, and I see the work that they're putting out, and I'm confident in my work. I'm not confident that it will ever see the big screen, but I don't need to. It doesn't need to. I already saw the movie. Everything that happens after this is inconsequential. Yeah, the recognition and the fame would be nice, but you know what? That's going to require compromises that I am not a guy to make. So, you know, like, I am perfectly happy doing what I'm doing. And I don't know why I felt, oh, this is what I wanted to say. So Tulsa King, this is what's interesting about where my life fits into all this stuff and where I'm at creatively and the work that I'm doing. And that is important. If you've gotten this far in the video and you haven't turned it off, you're probably a writer too. I'm on my own right now. I'm not in a relationship and I'm so happy for it. I do wish I had kids in a family, like Anthony Jeselnik is saying he hates kids, which I think is a step too far. I certainly don't hate kids. I am from a big family, so to me, this was more important than trying to raise children in poverty. If I was going to do this, I couldn't have a family until I made a bunch of money, and I haven't made a bunch of money yet. So if I do make a bunch of money, I'll give it to my nieces and nephews. I have plenty of family to give money to. That's not the problem. Like I said, it's been a fair trade. I do not resent the choices I've made. And if you can get to that place, wherever you are in life, if you're a heavy equipment operator, if you're an architect, if you're putting in floors, if you are proud of the choices you've made, and you can say that, like, every day is vacation for me. Every day is a holiday and every meal is a feast. So it's hard to celebrate Christmas. The 2 pages I've got for Norwegian Wood are really good. I spent a couple hours on it today. Tonight I'm gonna write the Barstow chapter for the novel. And it's all upward from here. The only thing that could happen is that there's like a world disaster. That's the only thing that can get me off course and give me a bummer of a day. So as long as California is not plunged in a civil war, I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.